Today we need to talk about one of the defective ways that people engage in reconciliation, racial reconciliation, and this even extends to the topic of cross-cultural missions and dialogue. And so we want to talk about the idea of putting others down to build ourselves up, to make ourselves look good, to make ourselves appear woke, if you will. Merriam-Webster has a definition for woke. This is not Urban Dictionary. This is, in fact, Merriam-Webster. And they say that being woke is being aware of and actively attentive to important facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice. And so most of the dialogue that we're going to have right now is going to take place in the context of racial reconciliation. But again, like I said, this applies to other categories as well. There's one missionary who writes about engaging different world religions, and he has a chapter on what he calls respect. And he says respect is not disparaging others in order to champion your own, and not disparaging your own in order to respect others. And as humans, we tend to be very binary. We're this or we're that. We're right or we're left. And in many issues, we approach it with that same kind of duality, where it's one or the other, but it can't be both. And so you can see this happen in political dialogue, where I'm either going to put you down or I'm going to put my side down in order to respect you or in order to respect me. And it's very difficult to hold a mutual respect of I respect you even if I disagree with you, or even if I do agree with you, and I respect my side whether I agree with my side or not. And I added that word in order to appear woke. Okay, so there's kind of an intended outcome of putting others down. For most people, particularly in these kinds of dialogues, the goal is never simply to insult someone. It has to be some payoff. And so what this looks like is there's kind of a whispering or a gossip that happens when we engage in this kind of defective behavior. I've seen cross-cultural missionaries do this, where they meet someone from the local culture, and it would validate them if this person from the local culture liked them more than the rest of the team. And so perhaps one of the team members makes a mistake, makes a blunder, says something, asks a dumb question, whatever the case may be. And in order to kind of build themselves up, in order to validate themselves, in order to show this person of, hey, I'm not like these primitive, backwards people that are on my team, I'm the next level missionary here, they will agree with in such a way the objection that the native person might have, in a way that puts their team down. And there are always opportunities, or sometimes they'll be like, oh, you should have heard what my teammate said the other day, da, 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 da. And they repeat this story about something that was said in confidence, and then they repeat this on to someone in order to create this kind of offense, and in order to also be the solution to the problem that they just introduced to this person. And this happens in racial reconciliation as well, where we hear something that happens behind closed doors. We hear a mistake someone made, and instead of doing the due diligence of confrontation, like we talked about the apostolic model, how the apostles handled things, where when there was racism, they went directly to the problem. Instead of dealing with the issue, oh great, we've collected this information now, we're aware of how wrong this is, whether it was intentional or not, whether it was in context or not, it doesn't matter. And now we run on to tell that person, and honestly, we induce more pain for that person who might already be experiencing pain and trauma from racism, from discrimination. And so we induce that pain in order to go, oh, but I'm not like that. I'm woke. And we live in a world that feeds on this. The secular world feeds on this. So you look at the media, look at the news stories coming across your social media feed. It's all of this gotcha stuff. The internet survives on a steady and very heavy fuel of people being exposed, documents being leaked, microphones that are left on stages when leaders don't know that they're being left on, emails that are being shared. This has even gotten to the point of hackers have hacked people's phones and shared very private pictures from people's phones, all to expose the real thing that nobody knows. And Christians engage in this on a small scale every time they gossip or put others down in order to build themselves up. I used to work in the oil field, and that we had a lot of Christians at our office, and we also had a Muslim man at our office. and I would travel many times with him on road trips to go do business out in the field. And one day he asked me, he goes, "Brian, do you think that Jesus is the Son of God?" Now, typically that's the question I get from Muslims, but then he added this caveat: do you think he's the Son of God like the other Christians do? Now, he's speaking of the Christians at the office. Now, I don't have time to unpack why the phrase Son of God is problematic for Muslims. Obviously, this is something theologically that we can't let go because the Bible does call Jesus the Son of God. But when this gets translated into the Islamic worldview, all they hear is that God had physical relations with Mary, and Jesus is the byproduct of this relationship. And thus the Trinity is God the Father, Mary, and Jesus. And so this is obviously not at all what we think, but this is very common on their side to understand phrases like the Son of God or the Trinity in this way: of Father, Mary, Jesus, and the Father had relations with Mary, and Jesus is their offspring. So that's one side of it, and it takes a lot of time to deal with this problem. It appears as us to a simple yes/no question, and it's just not. But the added problem is that he has been in conversation with people who, through no fault of their own, probably have not given the best answer to this question, probably haven't been aware that there's this huge controversy surrounding it, and have probably just answered like they would answer to anybody from their own background. The problem is this man is not from their background. He's from the Middle East. He's from a different language group. He's from a different religious group. He's from a different social and cultural setting from their own. And so there's this two-part question, and I realize I can't try to make myself look good by having the better answer to the degree that I would wind up putting down Christians at the office. And that was incredibly challenging, particularly because that first question is just such a difficult one to deal with very well. And so this was a challenge for me, but I was aware if I'm not careful, this is a moment where pride can take over, where I can try to make Team Brian look good, and that's not the point. We're here for Team Jesus. And there's a book I've been reading through recently, and I'm going to talk maybe a little bit more about this in another video. This is called Gracism. It's written by David Anderson. He's a pastor at a multicultural church. It's called The Art of Inclusion. Now, I'll be honest, I saw the title and I bought the book. If you can come up with a title like Gracism, I want to know about it. And in this book, he talks about this idea of covering other people in a protective kind of way. And so here's what he says. He says, "How different would life be if you lived each day committed to the dignity of those around you, especially those in need of extra care, instead of families, communities, and churches being filled with backbiting or suspicion? How about there being places where believers seek to help each other look and feel their best? How about an environment where I seek to help you succeed and you seek to encourage me? Or more, if I fall or if I fail, will you exploit and embarrass me because you can, or will you cover me? Is there not a balance somewhere between my sanctification and my missteps? If I ask the wrong question, use the wrong racial language, or hold an unpopular social view, will you call me a racist or sexist, or will you cover me while inspiring me to new levels of education and growth? These questions are poignant because they get to the heart of what it means to cover others who haven't been fully enlightened or sanctified." And so in this whole discussion on reconciliation, cross-cultural missions, racial reconciliation, there's always an opportunity for those of us who have taken the next step, who have kind of confronted our own demons, who have walked the path of trying to learn humility and trying to learn listening and reaching out to the other, whichever side of this you're on, whoever the other side is. It's easy to look back at our own side and disparage our own side, put down our own side, look down on our own side, or expose our own side to the other. But man, you just don't know how bad the people at my church are. You don't know how bad the people in my family are. And this is not what David Anderson would call gracism. And that's something he's promoting, is this idea that instead of seeing your weakness and just taking a snapshot and throwing it up, instead I cover it. And he's taking this from 1 Corinthians 12. This is verses 22 to 23. And Paul is talking again about spiritual gifts, and he's relating it to the body. He says, on the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And on those parts of the body that we think less honorable, we bestow the greater honor, and our unpresentable parts are treated with greater modesty. And this is where one of his sayings of a gracist is, I will cover you. It comes out of this right here. Paul is saying, the parts of your body that are weaker, that are less presentable, they're not wrong. We all need those parts of our body to function. But we also show greater modesty. We show greater protection to those parts. And so we see sports players playing dangerous games, and they put a mouth guard in, or they might wear a face guard or other protective gear to protect weak spots on their body. Those weak spots we don't put down. We definitely don't expose. We have to cover with greater modesty. And so as we think of those around us who aren't where we're at, or who might be stepping out of line, or might say something embarrassing, or might say something maybe a little bit more malicious than just an embarrassing misstep, is this an opportunity for us to poke them in the eye over this? Or is this something that we're willing to say, I will cover you?